in Aurora, California. You got a horrific home invasion. Colorado police detaining more than a dozen people in the kidnapping and torture of two victims that investigators link these suspects to that gang out of Venezuela known as ᗇΔેᗰကိ. So it tops our news today. Good morning, everybody, live in New York. Here we go. I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Dana Perino, and this is America's Newsroom. So you're going to see something. We talked about this story before,
Yes.
and it might look familiar when you see these pictures. So it happened at an apartment complex in Aurora.
Be able to say, I told you so on, but I told you so. And nobody wanted to listen to me. This very much turned into political theater leading up to the presidential election. And many people have suffered. This isn't just assault. This isn't just fist fights. This is absolute torture.
So the former acting DHS secretary is Chad Wolf. He's here in a moment for his reaction on that. First, the reporting. Jeff Paul begins our coverage in Los Angeles. And Jeff, what do we know? Hello.
Well, yeah, Bill and Dana, investigators say the two victims, both Venezuelan migrants, were not only kidnapped, but they were tortured. And we're learning this morning, according to our local Denver affiliate, police arrested 5 more people, bringing the total to 19 in custody. Now, on Tuesday, police were called out to a local apartment complex on reports of a home invasion. That's where they were told a group of people entered the victim's home, where they were then taken to another apartment, threatened, bound, and beaten. One victim was even stabbed. The other had their fingernails ripped out. Now, this went on for 4 hours until the victims were released after promising not to call the authorities. Aurora's police chief says the victims bravely called anyway and believes they were targeted by the gang because of their immigration status.
They victimize their own race and their own ethnicity. And the reason they do that is because they are easy victims. Because they know because of their status they will not come forward to the police. They know that they can mistreat them.
Now, this involves the same exact apartment complex from this now viral video that appeared to show armed TDA members breaking their way into an apartment. The Aurora City Councilwoman, who brought attention to the situation and was at the time criticized by it from some both state and local officials, says enough is enough.
I am tired of this situation being downplayed. I am tired of this being portrayed as just another gang in Aurora. This is actual human suffering of the most vulnerable community, the ones who would otherwise be afraid to call 911.
Now, federal law enforcement sources tell Fox News ICE, Homeland Security, and the DEA are involved in this latest round of arrests. They suspect at least 14 are TDA gang members. Bill, Dana.
Got it. Okay, Jeff, thanks. Leading our coverage there in Los Angeles, Jeff Paul.
And Chad Wolf, former acting DHS secretary and executive director at the America First Policy Institute. I remember President Trump, you'll all remember, he went to Aurora, Colorado to do an event. It wasn't because he thought he could win Colorado. That's pretty much a blue state at this point, but to shine a light on this very problem, Chad.
Well, absolutely. Look, President Trump has been leading on this issue for some time. But if you go back before the election there in Aurora, and it was downplayed and you know, saying, well, it's just an isolated incident. Well, clearly it's not isolated any longer. But this is the consequence of 4 years of obviously mismanagement of that southern border and really just not paying attention and taking your eye off the ball. There are consequences to the actions. And unfortunately, we're seeing this not only there in Aurora, but obviously in other cities as well. So it's really important. And it starts with leadership, and obviously President Trump's been on this for some time.
Chad, I think I saw a number, if it's right, 50,000 migrants in Denver, Colorado. Is that what is funneling the others to Aurora? What's the path?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Denver has sanctuary city policies, much like Chicago, much like New York, LA, and others. And what we know is that as individuals come in, and the cartels know this, right? And so they will start to funnel people to some of these major metropolitan areas, particularly those that they know law enforcement has a harder time in. And so obviously Denver, and then it starts to spread out to areas around Denver. So my guess is that's the pipeline in this instance. And, you know, you've got to show consequences. There's got to be some, again, consequences to action here. And we know, because I saw it when I was in service, the cartels, they know certain areas of the country that law enforcement cracks down on, and they stay away from those areas. And so, again, this is about response, this is about deterrence, and this is about holding people accountable. And if you do that, and you do that in an effective way that law enforcement knows how to do, you start to deter a lot of this bad behavior.
One of the things that we know is that the original response, the initial response from officials in Colorado were basically like, nothing to see here, folks, it's fine. And just remember this from Martha Raddatz asking J.D. Vance about it back in August.
The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs.
And now we know that by some of the reporting, including from the police in Denver and in Aurora, that the torture included fingernails being pulled out. And this is not just ᗇdéᗯကိ does not just have a presence in Colorado, but almost 29 states have it now.
Well, that's absolutely right. And again, this isn't just, your local criminals trying to rob someone. This is targeted gang violence by a very violent organization, TDA. We used to talk about MS-13 4 or 5 years ago, and of course they are still active. But this is the new version of that. And to see them gain strongholds in certain cities and metropolitan areas, it's a major concern, because obviously the violence flows from that. And of course, we see this now in Aurora. And the vice president-elect is totally right, which is, how many times does it take to really get your attention and to get law enforcement attention? And when you play it down, the police officers and law enforcement hear that. And so I think it's very important to be honest with the American people. Anytime there's anything like this, right? You see this in Aurora. I mean, they're pulling fingernails. This is not common crime that's going on here. This is organized criminal activity that needs to be dealt with.
Chad Wolf, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you, sir. On a similar topic, we mentioned this a moment ago. Andy Biggs, the Republican congressman out of Arizona, and they're talking about the border security and crackdown. Just drop in here on Capitol Hill.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate it. And I also want to thank you for setting this up and having this press conference about this most pressing issue. I know it is in Texas. The most pressing issue in Texas is our border. So I want to say good morning to everyone. As the disastrous Biden administration is coming to an end, and with that, there will be an end of open borders, asylum abuse, lawlessness, sanctuary cities. All these will end as well. I have great confidence, and I want to thank God for that. The voters chose Donald Trump in a historic landslide victory because they knew that Donald Trump was a man who would put this country back on the right track. The American people can finally breathe a very big and deep sigh of relief. But for us as members of the House Border Security Caucus, our job has just begun. Month after month, we invite expert guests to come and give us an in-depth look at the problems that we're facing all along our southern border, and as well our northern border as well. Dangerous drug and human trafficking cartels such as the Sinaloa and Jalisco are operating now in all 50 of our states. 100,000 Americans die each year of overdoses from drugs that are coming in over the border from Mexico. And over 230,000 migrant children are missing. Let that sink in. Where are they? Are they still alive? What's happened to them? International gangs like the Venezuelan ᗇdéᗯကိhave set up strongholds in at least 16 states across our great country. Nearly 100 people identified on our terrorist watch list were released and allowed to roam in our country freely. Every single one of these cartel thugs and evil terrorists needs to be deported immediately, and I am confident, like my friend Andy Biggs said, I'm confident that our president will start doing so immediately with his very wise appointee, Tom Homan, as his czar. Never have we seen and been so vulnerable to terrorism and crime, all because of Biden's, Harris's, and Alejandro Mayorkas's open borders. As we move into the 119th Congress, the House Border Security Caucus has a very clear vision, I want to assure you, to ensure that the American people are protected from those who seek to destroy our way of life and to right the wrongs of this previous administration. I'm very eager to work with the Trump administration once again. I'm very hopeful that we can solve these dire issues and to do so quickly to protect Americans. And now I'd like to give the floor to a man who has done more than just about anyone else to protect our borders, Jim Jordan. Yes, sir.
On day one, the Biden administration announced and implemented policies that led to the situation that Chairman Biggs and Mr. Babin had described, the co-chairs of the caucus. Remember what they did on day one? They said, no more building the wall, no more remain in Mexico, and when you get here, you will not be detained, you will be released. And they announced that to the world. And as a result, you've had millions and millions of people come to the border because they know there's no wall to get over. They don't have to wait in Mexico, and they're going to get to go wherever they want. They're not going to be detained at the border. That's the thing. Those are the things that have to change, and that's exactly what's going to happen in 34 days when President Trump, Tom Homan, and their team take over. The other thing we got to do is pass again the good legislation we passed a year and a half ago, led by the chairman of the subcommittee on immigration on judiciary, Tom McClintock. We need to pass that legislation. We've talked to Leader Scalise. He plans to do that. So we want to pass that again, send it to the Senate. Hopefully they will take it up and implement the policies that will reverse what the Biden administration did and help President Trump, help our country get the kind of border control situation that we need. So I want to introduce the guy who did so much work, as Andy and Brian have done leading the caucus, the guy who did so much work in our committee on this issue, the chairman of the subcommittee, Tom McClintock.
Okay, so we wanted you to listen a little bit of that. Andy Biggs, the Republican from Arizona, who ended his address right before we got in there, was talking about this CBP app, which has been used in the Biden administration to bring in thousands. How many? We really don't know what the number is, but from 4 specific countries. Donald Trump has pledged to shut that app down and more. So I wanted to share that.
And I imagine that you'll see a lot more coming from this. Of course, the voters said this was the #1 issue. They're not forgetting about this, and they want to see action, and especially on deporting criminal illegal migrants. And that ties us back to the first story we did today in this gang activity in Aurora, Colorado.
It's going to be a big story in 2025. 33 days and counting, as Jim Jordan just said. All right, here we go. New York City. Check it out from the DA.
This was a frightening, well-planned, targeted murder that was intended to cause shock and attention and intimidation.
So now the man charged with killing UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson now facing new charges, including one that is somewhat rare here in New York City. We'll explain that in a moment. Dana?
Meanwhile, House Republicans calling for a federal investigation into Liz Cheney, why they accuse her of potential witness tampering.
Also, the DOJ agenda is taking shape. How's this going to go, America? Caucus co-chair Aaron Bean is on the agency. One of the lawmakers looking to make some cuts. We'll talk to him momentarily.
There's still an energy, there's still a buzz on Capitol Hill. We had a packed caucus room.
Put us on the line. That's what the DOJ Commission is going to do.
We should be asking the question, how do we spend less and actually...
Fox News Alert indicted on first-degree murder as an act of terrorism. New York City prosecutors upgrade charges against the accused shooter of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Alexis McAdams here with the new developments. Why the change, Alexis?
Hi, Dana. Well, it looks like they're trying to hit him with every charge they can. Mangione's looking at nearly a dozen counts against him, including murder charges, including that specific one. Murder is a crime of terrorism, which you don't hear about too much here in Manhattan in terms of charges. Investigators say the reason they upgraded these charges, Dana, is simple. It's because the attack was planned out in a cold-blooded killing.
This was a killing that was intended to evoke terror. And we've seen that reaction. The statutory elements we can go into, but its most basic term, that's what this is. This was not an ordinary killing.
Now Mangione's looking at life behind bars here after investigators say he shot and killed UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson, who was a father of 2 in town in New York City just for business meetings. Police say Mangione specifically targeted UnitedHealthcare. But listen to this. Neither he or his mom were even insured by the company, so they're trying to figure out what was going on in his head. Investigators telling everyone who's listening Mangione is far from a hero. Watch.
There is no heroism in what Mangione did. This was a senseless act of violence. It was a cold and calculated crime that stole a life and put New Yorkers at risk. We don't celebrate murders, and we don't lionize the killing of anyone.
So investigators say they questioned Mangione's mom less than 48 hours before he was arrested, asking her if that was her son in those wanted posters that had been all across the country. What Mangione's mom said now, Dana, is evidence in this case. Listen.
They had a conversation where she didn't indicate that it was her son in the photograph, but she said it might be something that she could see him doing.
Yeah, so now police are going to look into that, and they're also waiting to talk to Thompson's family as well as they have this case coming back to New York City. We know Mangione tomorrow, Dana, is going to be in court. It's only going to be about for 30 minutes, I'm told. Then he's going to come right back to New York City because sources say he's going to waive his extradition. So we'll keep an eye on it, Dana.
All right, Alexis, thank you so much. And New York City Mayor Eric Adams joins Martha McCallum later today on The Story. That's at 3 p.m. Eastern, so we all look forward to seeing
Certainly
that.
do. Be interesting, right? So more meetings on the Hill today. We're watching and waiting for this. President-elect Donald Trump's nominees making their case to senators yet again. You got Robert Kennedy Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, both back today. Also on the Hill, Labor Secretary-pick Lori Chavez DeRemer. Trump also tapping former Georgia NFL legend Herschel Walker as ambassador to the Bahamas, then posting this on Truth Social last evening. To all Senate Republicans, no deal with Democrats to fast-track nominations at the end of this Congress. I won the biggest mandate in 129 years. I will make my appointments of very qualified people in January when I am sworn in. End quote from Truth Social.
Well, the Congressional Doge Caucus convening for the first time yesterday. The meeting attracting a few Democrats as well, as Republicans look to work with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy to slash government spending. Florida Congressman Aaron Bean is co-chair of the House Doge Caucus. Great to have you here. Tell me about the meeting. I mean, obviously it was pretty well attended. You had 29 sign up to come, but over 60 attended?
That's right, Dana. And good morning to you and good morning, Bill. We had a great meeting, a great launch of Doge. There is tremendous interest in breaking this addiction to spending, overspending, and efficiency. And hopefully Doge can have an intervention with this town and break that cycle.
So there were some Democrats that came, I mentioned that, and Pete Aguilar said this about working with Doge.
Democrats are willing to work with anyone to make government more efficient. I think that's the important piece. You know, we want to be responsive to everyday Americans. We will speak out against those policies that hurt our communities. But we're going to listen and have conversations about efficiencies and making government more efficient.
Okay, but then you had Governor Gavin Newsom, also of California, same as Pete Aguilar, saying this.
We've been working, I don't know, before Doge was Doge. I don't know what this is just like a promo project. We've been doing civil service reform in this state. We've been consolidating job classifications. We've been updating job descriptions in this state. California's been a leader in that space.
Do they have a misunderstanding of what Doge is trying to accomplish?
I think they do, it's particularly California. I don't know if Governor Newsom knows, his state is running one of the largest deficits of any state. So overspending is what's causing his state to go in a different direction. It's what's causing our government to go in a different direction. So, and Pete Aguilar's comments right there I think are bold. What we're trying to do is create an environment of trust where Republicans and Democrats can come together and we can work together and not be afraid of each other, not be afraid of the debate. America is demanding change now, and we have a limited window to bring it to them.
There was an article talking about low-hanging fruit, like what's the easy stuff to cut. Do you think there will be agreement on that?
I think there will. I think America is done subsidizing people's choice in cars, subsidizing energy production that isn't delivering the bang for the buck. And yes, we need to get government workers back to the office and reevaluate the billions of square footage of buildings that we monitor that are empty, that we maintain that are empty or have a very low occupancy. So there's lots of things to do, and that's why we want to build this team. There's something for everybody on Doge.
Have you heard from Musk and Ramaswamy about some sort of deliverables that they would like to see from the caucus in order to get going?
Well, we had our initial meeting 2 weeks ago where they were treated as rock stars, and so we had that initial meeting. There is no wrong answer of what to do first or what to cut first, but we want to be their backup. We want to put permanency, as they're going to use the president's pen to make some executive orders, but we want it permanent, and that's where Congress has to come together to make these changes last.
Well, we will see what happens. Aaron Bean, I hope you'll come back. There's a huge amount of interest from our audience on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dana. Go get them.
Okay.
Dana reads sport.
The Milwaukee Bucks are your 2024 NBA Cup champions. The Bucks knocking off the Oklahoma City Thunder 97-81. Power forward Giannis is also known as the Greek Freak. Do you know this, Bill?
I know about the Greek Freak.
The
Yes.
Greek Freak,
Yeah,
and
big time.
he won with MVP honors and a triple double. What is a triple double?
Triple double. That means you get double figures in points, rebounds, and assists. I do believe.
I didn't know basketball was still going on.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I didn't know basketball was still going on. That's a very long season.
So basketball goes till like June. That's called the NBA Cup, and I'm really not up to speed on it.
Oh, okay.
It's
So
like
I'm not the only one.
No, yeah, correct. Yeah, I'm here to
a triple
commiserate
double
with you. Yes, on the but the NBA Cup is like a tournament in the middle of the season, which I think is kind of cool and interesting. But I didn't know what was going on.
And now you know that we didn't know.
Now you know. You got it. Okay, here we go. Check this out.
If these hostages aren't back home by that date, all hell's going to break out, and very strong.
Okay, he said it once, now he's saying it again. Donald Trump talking tough against Hamas over the hostages. Can he succeed where the Biden-Harris administration has failed? That's a very good question. One for Nikki Haley. We will get to her live in a moment here on set. Plus, the House reaching a deal on a spending bill. Speaker Johnson giving members 3 days to read it, teeing up high-stakes vote at the end of the week. But some Republicans pushing back, calling it a Christmas tree bill with all the presents.
Into former GOP Congresswoman Liz Cheney. Republican lawmakers focusing on potential ethical and legal violations through allegedly improper witness communications during her role on the January 6th committee. The panel releasing a report saying this in part: numerous federal laws were likely broken by Liz Cheney, and these violations should be investigated by the FBI. So that news in today. We'll see how it goes.
Meanwhile, you've got lawmakers unveiling a so-called Christmas tree spending bill to keep the government up and running until the month of March. It's packed with pork, we are told, and could jeopardize the House Speaker Mike Johnson's bid to keep the gavel in the new year. Chad Pergram's got a rundown of the proponents and the critics on this. Chad, good morning. What are they saying?
Bill, good morning. A congressional Christmas tree just before the holidays. The 1,500-page bill is adorned with all sorts of ornaments added in the past few days. House Speaker Mike Johnson did not want to do it this way, especially before Christmas.
This is the sausage-making process, okay? Here's what this bill entails. It's a short-term funding extension until March 14, and that would have been an easy thing relatively to pass. But here's what happened. We also had to add, and due to circumstances outside of any of our control, emergency funding. We have two major emergencies.
The bill is stocked with $100 billion for Hurricanes Helene and Milton, plus a federal guarantee to pay for the collapsed bridge in Baltimore. Another provision also allows lawmakers to opt out of Obamacare and get pay increases. Plus, there is language which mandates transparency in ticketing for concerts. Conservatives are fuming.
The whole point of our debate 2 years ago about the Speaker and about what we do on the floor of the House is to open it up, not close it, not to have four-quarter negotiations where you end up with what we're seeing right now, which is more of the same. Why are we doing a CR that's basically now a frickin', whatever you want to call this, a cramnibus, we're kind of calling it, right? Because they're cramming everything into it in the last few minutes.
Conservatives believe some Republicans are trying to have it both ways, advocating for spending cuts via DOGE, yet backing this bill. Some may withhold their support for Johnson during the Speaker's vote in January.
I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I don't want to say. I think Mike is a very good human being. He's a brilliant human being, good heart, but we're dealing with the mob here, so I'm not sure how tough he is to really govern, but this place needs some courage.
Johnson plans to let members ponder the bill until Friday, then vote It likely needs Democrats to pass, but that means the Senate must act fast. The deadline is early Saturday. Bill?
I mean, interesting ride, Chad. Take us along, okay? Nice to see you on the Hill
I'll be here.
program. Thanks, Dana.
And President-elect Trump holding the feet of Hamas to the fire. He's warning the Iranian-backed terror group again to release the hostages, including several Americans who have been held captive for more than 14 months. Nikki Haley, former U.S. ambassador to the UN. She's also the chair of the Hudson Institute. And she has her podcast. It's Nikki Haley Live on SiriusXM. So great to have you here in the city and on set with us. There's so much happening. Let's start with Jake Sullivan, who said this today on MSNBC about the hostages.
We are wary about making predictions or promises, but this is close. And with enough pushing from the outside mediators and the commitment of Israel and Hamas, we can get it done. Israel is ready to do this deal. So the final piece of the puzzle, from my perspective, is for Hamas ultimately to come forward with a commitment on the release of hostages in that first phase of a multi-phase deal.
Let me just open the door and let you talk about that.
100 hostages living in brutal conditions. Israel has always said, we will work on a deal, but the hostages have to be part of it. And, you know, you see what's happening at the United Nations. They want to push Israel into a deal, but they don't want to talk about hostages. Priority number one. We have to get it. They've suffered long enough. I think that any country that fights this, pushes back, you know, there is no basis for that. But Iran is weak. Let's move while we can. Let's get those hostages home. Iran doesn't have a leg to stand on.
The thing that Hamas has said is that the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, have to be out of Gaza entirely. And Netanyahu's saying, forget it. That's not going to happen.
They're not going to leave the hostages.
And we're waiting on Hamas this entire time.
No, I mean,
crank up the pressure.
The hostages are in Gaza. Israelis are not going to leave those hostages in Gaza. They're going to stay until they get them home. This is not about compromising with Hamas. Hamas has no ability to compromise at this point. They either give us the hostages or they don't. Their decision. Iran can't back them up anymore. We need to make this push hard.
Before we go to another part of the world, you told us a moment ago that Syria is an opportunity.
Huge opportunity.
How?
It is, you know, can't take your eyes off on it. But think about what happened. You have Iran that was really pummeled by Israel with the defeat of Hamas and Hezbollah. You've got Russia that's distracted with Ukraine. Turkey saw an opening, and all of a sudden they're working with HTS to bring down Assad. A great day for Syrians that Assad is gone. He was the butcher of Damascus. But what it really means is we have to watch HTS. We see them as a terrorist group. But Turkey wants Ukraine to win. So the best thing we need, what does Russia want? Those two bases. They have a naval base and they have an air base. This is the time for the U.S. to work with Turkey to tell Russia, okay, you want those bases? What are we going to do with Ukraine? How are we going to settle this? That is the opportunity to be had. Also, the opportunity is Iran got all of the weapons to Israel by way of Lebanon. So this opens up the Middle East in a way that we could really have peace. We don't know if that's going to work, but the U.S. needs to be talking with Turkey or our Arab allies, put pressure on Iran, and above all things, if you were ever going to take out the nuclear production sites, now is the time to do it. Turkey wants to do it. Israel wants to do it. The U.S. would want to do it, and some of the Arab countries would want to do it.
So then does that get us a step closer to a possible resolution in Ukraine?
I think if we use these military bases as leverage, and you see where Russia is, I mean, they are looking at 50% of Russia's budget is going to military operations. I mean, Putin is feeling weakened. He just put all this time and effort into Syria. All that has gone away. They are seeing deaths. I mean, hundreds of thousands of deaths that they've had. Putin's looking for an out, but he wants a good deal. But he really wants these bases. Let's use these bases as leverage to get him to back off of Ukraine.
Let's talk about the Trump time now. The budget defense is being talked about a lot right now. We can put on the screen the budget for the fiscal year 2023, and you can see the outlays, and it's substantial. It's just short of $1 trillion here. Here's Ro Khanna, a progressive Democrat from California, who says, you know what, we might need to think about this, but he has his perspective. Watch.
I have said also that the Democrats shouldn't just reflexively say we're not going to work with DOGE on anything. Instead, we should focus his efforts on places where there actually is waste, like the Department of Defense, which is 56% of the budget.
Everybody is coming at this from their own perspective. Dana and I were sitting here on the air yesterday, and Speaker Johnson said the $10 billion for the farmers will be included. And that's a lot of money. But when Musk and Ramaswamy are talking about cutting $2 trillion, we went to the computer and $10 billion is 0.5%.
0.05.
0.5. 0.5% of $2 trillion. How are we going to get there, and what's realistic?
Well, you're not going to get there by Republicans on the spending spree, which is what they're doing. I mean, learn the lessons from before. You didn't just win an election. You won an election and a mandate that they expect Republicans to lead. That means getting your budget under control. Do we want to see stronger defense spending? Yes, but before you do any of that, let's focus on priorities. Number one, we should be focused on batteries and chips. That's going to be really important for what we need to do in defense going forward. Second thing is we want to make sure we get any national security waivers that we can so that we get the bureaucracy out of the workforce. We have to skill them to make sure that they can build up these new, going into this new military situation that we're going into. And then look at the procurement. The procurement is messed up. It always has been. So the big guys win and the little guys never get anything. We need to get all of that out of the way. When you start to do those things, and focus on what wars of the future would look like instead of wars of the past, that's when you can save money in the defense budget. But not only that, right now, 5 million federal employees. Do we need that many people in government? We don't. Go to the payroll of every agency and say, do we really need all these people? There are places to cut. It's going to hurt. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to make us stronger in the end.
Nikki Haley, thanks for being here today.
Great to see you. Merry Christmas.
It's going to be interesting in 2025. Hope you come back and we'll go through it again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice to see you again. Vice President Kamala Harris now giving her first major address since her loss to Donald Trump. What she is telling young Democrats today.
Many people have come up to me telling me they feel tired, maybe even resigned. I ask you to remember that this struggle.
Beide Werften machen quasi so Wettkampf, wer mehr wegwirft. Die Calls von Poppy sind richtig bad. Sie klaut in a row, zweimal in der Wave. Die kennen's. Die neigt mir damit 180 Gold. Keiner weiß warum. Um AD Poppy zu bauen, es ist geisteskrank. Okay. Wir haben Jungler, der jeden einzelnen Drake in diesem Game bisher 25 Minuten straight up ignoriert hat. Ich weiß nicht, ich bringe meinem Team, wir brauchen hier jemand, der vielleicht Deffen hilft. Team will nicht. Team rennt lieber alleine in 4 Leute rein. Oh, ich habe keinen bekommen, let's go. Er wurde mir nicht geklaut, ich habe sie selber geintet. Finally. Warum gehst du da jetzt alleine rein? Hä? Was? Hä? Warum griefen die Leute so sehr? Die rennt doch, das war doch gerade bewusst runterrennen, oder nicht? Das ist so bewusstes Runterrennen. What the hell? Was mit diesen Leuten, ja, ich muss wirklich sagen, es stimmt schon, also irgendwie, IOW ist unplayable. Die Leute sind so krass toxic. Vor allem, sie chattet die ganze Zeit am meisten und flamet jeden im Team, aber hat 8 Tode. 8 Tode, die hat alleine das Game eigentlich fast unplayable gemacht. Das Ranking, ja, das ist so krass. Ich habe einen Jungler, der wirklich sich weigert, auch nur einmal Botside Objectives zu nehmen. Das ist wirklich verrückt, was hier passiert. Zum Glück streame ich, dann seht ihr das auch, weil es würde mir sonst wirklich keiner glauben. Guck, fahrmäßig holen wir auch langsam auf. Trotz Sabotageversuche für seitens des Supporters. Bald haben wir auch 3 Items. Die Gegner sind so krass daher, die sind alle so gefiedert. Die haben alle schon 3 Items. Selbst der exterior Support hat 2. Hier 2 Leute heißt, wir können aber die Wave pushen. Wir für Tower gehen. Wir wissen aber nicht, wo Kaiser ist. 2 sind Toplane-Mode. Kaiser könnte jetzt Mitte moven. Egal, einfach Mitte durch. Okay, das wird wahrscheinlich auch kein Elder für uns sein. Ich glaube, wir machen heute einfach 0 Drakes Challenge. Ich weiß nicht, ob ich das tragen kann. Oder die können, glaube ich, finishen.